Hello and welcome to this RFL New Year's Special 2017, A Look Back. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, in this hour, we're going to take a look back at some of the biggest stories of the year in politics, news, top stories in our region. We'll also ask our panel what resonated with them personally. We're also going to take a look at the people that we lost. Now, we begin, though, in Washington, and we said goodbye to President Obama and said hello to President Trump, and it has been quite a ride ever since. Now, if you thought the 2016 election year was exhausting, the first year of President Trump probably topped that. We've seen a lot of records set for this president, lowest approval ratings ever for the first year of a president, record high turnover, and a record number of tweets. Let's take a look at some highlights and also lowlights.
Here we go.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Look how far this is.
We thank you for the opportunity and the blessing.
He's got perfect genes.
A gun in the school to protect from potential grizzlies.
Department of Energy, I regret recommending its elimination.
There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships.
Why whitewash Jews from that
I'm
statement?
not whitewashing anything.
There will be no private air charters.
Opposition party.
Alternative facts. The Bowling Green massacre.
Microwaves that turn into cameras.
Go buy Ivanka's stuff.
You called the president a moron.
The lack of an ability to compromise led to the Civil War.
A judge sitting on an island in the Pacific.
I've seen this guy throw a dead spiral through a tire. I've seen him at Madison Square Garden with a top coat on. He's hitting foul shots and swishing them. He sinks 3-foot putts.
This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
I'm not Steve Bannon. I'm not trying to suck my own.
Somebody's asking a question. It's not your press briefing. We're going to raise our hand like big boys and girls. I think the president's tweet speaks very clearly for itself.
The president speaks for himself.
You're equating me addressing the nation here in a tweet? That's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
President Trump's account was deleted.
Obama had my quote-unquote wires tapped.
When I say wiretap, those words were in quotes. At least we have something in common. You were invaded yet again, this time by Nazi Germany from the west and the Soviet Union from the east. That's trouble. That's tough. I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete. He is a sick puppy. They will be met with fire and fury. Rocket fuel. Little Rocket Man. Russia is a ruse.
My staff recommended recusal.
I was going to fire.
Someone sent me an email. I can't help what someone sends me.
I did not collude with Russia.
Collusion, no. Illusion, delusion, yes.
Putin's a killer. You think our country's so innocent?
I am the least anti-Semitic person.
Someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
One of our attorneys is a Jew.
They call her Pocahontas. I think there's blame on both sides. Antifa! Who, by the way, has lost a lot of weight. So you have no weight problems. It's a hell of a way to lose weight, Steve.
He's so unattractive.
I rise today to call for the impeachment.
Look, he wants to remain a senator, doesn't he? Nobody knew that health care could be so complicated. We hope John McCain gets better. He's a crusty voice.
Obamacare is the law of the land.
Let Obamacare fail.
Nevertheless, she persisted.
Reclaiming my time.
He likes us.
You wouldn't support him again. No way.
Do you agree with the notion that it was rigged?
Yes.
I will not be complicit.
I don't know what it means to be complicit.
Melania really wanted to be with us. Now, I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack. There was water like nobody's ever seen. What a crowd, what a turnout. Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out. You are fake news. I'm changing it from fake news. Very fake news. We've just launched 59 missiles heading to Iraq. When somebody disrespects our flag, get that son of a bitch off the field. When you see these thugs, please don't be too nice. I can be the most presidential person ever. Who the hell wants to speak about politics when I'm in front of the Boy Scouts? Who would believe this? Sweden. Frederick Douglass. I hope they're showing how many people are in this room, but they won't. We have submarines. We'll have great phones. The most beautiful piece of chocolate cake. You've never seen so much paper on the president's desk. I'm not ranting and raving. I just don't want a poor person. Eventually, we're going to get something done. Pray for Ronald. I thought it would be easier. I do miss my old life. A president. Can you believe it? God bless the United States.
I'm exhausted just watching that. Let's bring in our panel. Jeannie Zato, professor of political science at Iona College, also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Republican strategist Joseph Pinion. Good luck, Joe, tonight. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. I forgot about some of those, but I'm even more frightened than before I started the show. You know, Andrew, remember the arguments after the election, and remember the sober Donald Trump coming out?
That was so long
ago.
ago.
No, when he met with Obama and he came out, you got the idea that he understood the gravity of the job, that all those promises that, oh, that was the campaign Trump, the presidential Trump will be that much more presidential. I'm still waiting.
Oh, he can be more presidential than anybody ever in history, at least to hear him. It's all the talk. You remember after the election, the transition when it was maybe he'll pivot and he'll be bipartisan. Maybe he'll be this maverick that's not representative of either party and bring both parties together. Maybe he'll moderate from what. None of that has happened. In fact, it's almost become worse. It seems like he's more frenetic than he was on the campaign trail. And every day, whether it's by tweet or something he says or even the interview that landed in the Times this morning, you read the verbatim on that, and it's incomprehensible. It's literally incomprehensible.
I can do whatever I want with the Justice Department, but Jeannie, on just a broad level, and I know, you know, Andrew and Dom and I, we do this every night for an hour, and you don't have to plan a show. That's the funny part. I've been doing this for so long. You create what we call a rundown at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you purposely leave a segment or something empty because at 4 o'clock something's going to happen, right? Someone's going to get fired. He's going to send some tweet. He'll say something insane, and then you got to scrap the whole rundown. So it kind of defeats the purpose. But I meant it when I said it has been exhausting. There have been things that have been said and done that barely even register. I looked at some of those things that we didn't even talk about during the course of the year because so much other craziness was going on. More than just, you know, dreading to read what he'll say or do from day to day, there's been, I think there's going to be scar tissue, no matter how this ends, that we're not better off as a country. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not even talking the policy part of it, but it's really toxic right now, and I see no inclination to dial it back at all. If anything, he seems to revel in it.
No, he's not going to dial it back, obviously. I mean, Andrew was just talking about, we were talking about him pivoting after the primary, after he won the primary. None of that happened. After he got the nomination, none of that happened. He's not going to pivot. He's not going to change. But I think in part because this is, whether you accept it or not or like what he's doing or not, this is working for him. This is his style. He diverts attention over here and he does things over here.
How is it working? See, I argue that. I've heard people say, hey, he hasn't lost his base. A third of the country, he's right. He could shoot somebody in Times Square and they'd still stand by him. But that's only a third of the country.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, from Donald Trump's perspective, this is working for him. If you look at what he's saying, he is deregulated beyond his wildest imagination and hopes during the election. He got a successful Supreme Court nomination. He got the tax bill through. He has maintained his base, and you know what? All of his friends on Wall Street are incredibly happy.
The funny part is he didn't have friends on Wall Street, and he didn't really care about deregulation. My point is, somebody else's policies have been enacted. What was his big promise? He was going to get the wall.
Traditional Republican policies have been enacted. So I'm not saying I agree with him, but I'm saying from one perspective, he can look and say, yeah, I've done what I needed to do as the head of the Republican Party and as president. And is he going to continue? I think it's going to get tougher next year. But he has, you know, this has worked for him because what else is he going to do? He's not a politician. He's not a public official.
I believe it or not, that he squandered an opportunity that he could have, if he chose different things to try and do first and not wasted the time on healthcare and stuff, I think he could have had a hell of a lot more productive first year. But Dominic, coming back to our world for a little bit, we learned new terms this year, and also terms we're not allowed apparently to have our government say anymore. They, you know, can't say things like climate change, or can't say science-based facts in whole different agencies, that those are banned. We learned a new word, or phrase, alternative facts, which basically means come up with whatever you believe and defy fact if you don't like how it sounds. PolitiFact. 4% of what the president says is factual. Think about that. Do we know anyone in our personal lives that literally 1 out of less than 20 things they say is true? I mean, it's amazing where we are right now and what has come to be somewhat accepted as par for the course of the daily news cycle, what we're going to get. I mean, just think about it. Today, we're reading about him saying that the Justice Department, he can do whatever he wants with it. In a normal world, that would be the most unbelievable thing. But as we showed you in that compilation of clips to the audience, this is just a day in Trump land.
No doubt about it. This is the man that questioned, because as that piece was playing, all I kept thinking about was prior presidents, in particular the last president. Can you imagine, I'm not making this racial, can you imagine if Obama did 10% of what President Trump has done thus far in year one? They would have escorted him out of the White House. He did have one night where he was presidential. He had one.
The night we bombed Syria?
No, State of the Union. For about 12 hours after his State of the Union, even though it wasn't called the State of the Union address, he appeared presidential. He didn't step on his message. So, Richard, we are in uncharted territory when there's only going to be one Donald Trump. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that things are so destructive and so bad that once he leaves office, we're all going to be left here with the damage, the baggage of the bad things,
and I
of
am
fake
with you.
news.
And I am with you, which is there will be residual impacts, credibility of who to believe and not to believe, and facts go out the window. But I think if we're this tired after a year, I think the American public has, we have at different times in our history found a way to recalibrate things and bring back sanity. Maybe it'll be next year, maybe it'll be in 3 years, but I think it'll happen. But Joe, to me, there were certain signposts this year when he said the FBI he made the equivalent that there was a coup that they were doing because they were doing their job. He embraced Nazis. He kind of, in Charlottesville, I saw something I didn't recognize anymore, and we abdicated our role on the global stage as being the superpower and the world leader. Those things aren't Republican or Democrat. I mean, I saw members of your party that were just disgusted with what he said after Charlottesville, and then to actually stand shoulder to shoulder with Roy Moore, an accused pedophile. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that this is going to be a time that we'll be like, oh, those were just crazy Trump years? Or is this going to linger even beyond it?
There will be a price to pay. I think that first and foremost, we have to understand what got President Trump to the White House. I think that you look at the plurality that we had in the primary process, he was a nominee. I think that a lot of Republicans that I spoke to, particularly in Northeast, young individuals, I mean, the only two words that would ever come out of their mouth about President Trump was Supreme Court. I think that was something that is rarely talked about as in the driving force, the way that how do people hold their nose over so much of these things that really stink to the high heavens, so many things that are the antithesis of what we claim as core Republican values, core conservative values, is the fact that there were so many people who had their own little pet projects. I think from some people there was that one project that is the overriding project, which is the Supreme Court. For some people like Paul Ryan have been talking about tax reform literally their entire adult lives. And so in many ways you have people who, for better or for worse, have been able to act as if somehow these things, these objectives justify the means. And I think that what we're not talking about is the fact that what we've talked about in the show, that there'll be children for a generation now having atrocities happening to them that won't come forward because the President of the United States and the GOP wrap their arms around a child molester. We're not talking about the fact that the President of the United States, who said that he was going to make America great again, literally got on a plane and flew down to the Panhandle to campaign for a man that said the last time this nation was great was during slavery. Those are the type of things that have an effect on the fiber of a nation that in more ways is more the responsibility of the president than any of the policy that he passes. And I think that that's why we're kind of in this place right now where, yes, Republicans can on some base level be happy about some things, but there are other things on an American level that
it's that additional cost, though. It's even if you wanted his policies, even if you wanted Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, the trashing of the norms of the presidency and the the level that we held president. With the first 44 presidents, we held to a level that we made sure they were telling the truth. And if they weren't telling the truth, we pushed back on them until they admitted they weren't telling the truth. This guy lies all the time. And it seems like we are setting up the worst possible example of our government's leadership. And so that all the predictions that people hate Washington, don't trust Washington, he's bringing those to life. And that could be generational as well.
And to me, though, it's even more basic than, we don't even have to look long term. We are angrier as a country. And we are fighting battles that I thought we settled. I never thought racism didn't exist in America, don't get me wrong. But the idea that my president would somehow normalize guys with torches that relate to Nazis in America was something I didn't think we'd ever have to have a conversation about. And that the idea that protest or speech is to be not only condemned but maybe squashed, or that you'll stop press from saying things you don't like, or fire people who have a different opinion than yourself. I don't know. We grade him on such a curve because we haven't seen anything like this before. But when you see those clips and you consider the words that have been said, I've never seen it before, and I do worry just about the temperature. And there'll be times when every president's got to bring down the temperature, and I just don't think he's got that in the toolbox. But all right, coming up next. It wasn't just politics this year. There was huge news stories in 2017. We saw the deadliest shootings in U.S. history, terror attacks, devastating fires in California, and also the damaging and deadly hurricane season. We'll talk about that and more after this.